Hey, what's up, everybody? You know what time it is. Your boy Jeffrey L. Boney live for another edition of Real Talk Junkies. Your favorite host, Jeffrey L. Boney here. And of course, as always, we have some amazing discussion, amazing conversation about topics and information that matters to us most. Of course, here in the coming weeks, we'll be talking about a lot of the things that are going on in our country, particularly relative to these recent Supreme Court decisions, the upcoming November midterm elections, the status and state of Black America today. Are we in a better position than we were during the Civil Rights Movement? Or are we in a worse state? Are we going backwards? Are we stagnant? I mean, what's the situation? But anyway, whatever we do, one of the things that I know first and foremost is that we have to focus on improving our position in this country. And that has to relate to economics. I mean, we cannot do anything in this world without economics. When you sit back and think about what Black people truly own or what we truly control in this country, I mean, really, it's very, very slim, if not none. Who controls the education system? Who controls our healthcare system? Who controls our court system, law enforcement? Who controls politics? Who controls the Supreme Court? I mean, we think about all the things that impact African Americans, and at the end of the day, unless we put people in office that represent our interests and continue to represent our interests, we're going to be impacted. And unless we control our economics, then we're going to always find ourselves in harm's way. And the only way we can truly make a difference is through economics, business entrepreneurship, and philanthropy. One of the biggest philanthropic things that we do as a people collectively, for the most part, is give to the Black church. So we know a little something about philanthropy, but do we truly know the type of impact that philanthropy makes here in our country, here in our communities? To talk about some of the things that this person is doing to make a true difference in their community, not only from a economics and an entrepreneurship standpoint, also from a philanthropic standpoint, is none other than my good friend, Miss Danette K. Davis. Come on down to Real Talk Junkies, y'all. Let's give it up. Let's give it up, y'all. Welcome to Real Talk Junkies. Have a seat. All right. So, a lot of people don't know how amazing of an individual you are. I know you're extremely humble, but you do a lot in the community. You've made such a tremendous impact, continue to make an impact. But let's start a little bit and go backwards and talk about your company and K. Davis Associates. Tell us about K. Davis Associates.
Well, K. Davis Associates, been around 22 years now.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you very much. We're furniture, fixture, and equipment consultant and sales company.
Okay.
It's really important that we do both.
So what does that actually mean? Furniture, fixture, all that stuff. So that means that whenever you have buildings or things that are being built out and stuff like that, you provide all of the furniture and fixtures.
It means exactly that. It means, as we sit here, everything you see in this room.
I see you looking at the set. You know what I'm saying? Trying to figure out
everything that you have here is a part of furniture, fixture, and equipment. And I think that the fixtures part maybe we'll throw folk because, but it's things that are affixed to the building. They back in the day they would say if you could turn the building upside down, and everything that fell out, would be furniture, fixtures, and equipment. It's kind of changed over the years, so we do some things that now are attached to the building and things like that, and grown that thing because the mixture of space planning and furniture, architecture, and all those things have kind of become a total package. So what we at K. Davis Associates will do as our turnkey offering of services is work with the owner, work with the architect, and plan your space. And when I say plan your space, I mean from concept and programming, listening at what you say you want to do with it, through to completion, where we literally will sell you the furniture or the fixtures, lighting even. We work with interior designers with respect to colors, choice of rugs, and all those kinds of things like that. But primarily the furniture, fixtures, and equipment is what we'll do. Now, when we space plan it, we listen to you. And then we say, okay, now I heard you, and this is what I thought you said. So I'll repeat that back to you, and then we'll plan it for you. We have over 75 lines of product. that we use. That's just not furniture. That's all of the things that I mentioned. So I can sell you what you need and not what I sell. And I think that's real important. One of the things that we tell our clients, I sell you what you need. I'll source it if I have to, but I have a plethora of things that I can offer you. So I don't have to sell you one or two lines and try to convince you that this is what you want. No, you said this, and I heard you. We even have literally we work with fabricators. So when I can't get you exactly from the factories that I do business with every day, we design it. I have 8 degreed interior designers that work in the office, and that's on purpose. My whole direction with that was not to just have a sales force and then get out there and have factories, people that you don't know, you haven't talked to, do your design, and then kind of go back and forth. No, we bring them, they do the sell, and they'll sit there and listen to you, then we'll lay it out. We had a meeting yesterday with a group. They were referred through someone else, and so they do tutoring, right? But they do it in several schools. As a matter of fact, there's like 20 projects and they'll have one room in every school. And then one of the things they said to us, we want to make sure when they walk in the door, they know exactly who we are. So we wanted some signage and we wanted some interesting things, but we wanted to be, excuse me, impactful. So we put together, okay, here's the 2-3 things that we think we heard you say. This takes care of the component where you meet the kids. They come in and they have this mantra. They have to say, I can do all things. I can do this. I will be successful. So we came up with these ways to put that, on the tables or on the walls, and pieces and things like that. We showed them examples of what we've done things like that before. And then we showed them, and then they fed back and we said, okay, which one? And they said, well, we like number 2. This is the best, whatever. And then, of course, the next thing is how much.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So, of course,
That's important.
right. So, and then we know that we deal with schools a lot. So we know that schools have budgets. So one of the things I think we try to do is be competitive in our numbers. That's really important, that we all are units of business, but you have to be competitive knowing that people choose you. They don't have to.
Yeah.
For all the things that all the folk that they could use, other folk do what you do.
Yeah. Now let me say this, because many times when we are growing up or going to school, we like, oh, I want to be a lawyer or a doctor or a firefighter or a police officer. Did you say I want to own a furniture fixture equipment company?
You know what? No.
How'd you get into that?
It's funny. Actually, it's interesting. I was working at Texas Southern University, right? And honestly, TSU, yeah. But I also graduated from TSU, so I think early on I had a lot of interest, and I still do, in theater and art, and I did a lot of those types of things. I knew I like writing and all of that. In the beginning, that you don't really know exactly what you want to do, right? So you just kind of get in and find your way. And I was doing telecommunications and this same kind of. I did radio as a KTSU for a while, and at the ensemble for a while, and doing those things. But we had to pay our bills. So I had to work, and it's the interesting thing. I call myself literally. I said, okay, I need to. If I'm at TSU and I'm working there, I'm gonna finish, and and I fell in love with project management and facilities and things like that. And I kind of in my mind connected. There's a beauty to the work. There's a beginning, a middle, and end, like a play, and at the same time, it allows me to actually reach out and touch and affect things for real. This is in real time. Construction is really a thing. And so as you work through project management and you do these things, manage construction, and it is what it is. But what I realized because I stayed there like 18 years, right? So toward the end, at TSU, working there. So toward the end, when I'm looking at the project management aspect of contractors, I think what I saw most frustrating was how we leave folk, and at the end, it's how you feel. And furniture is like the last thing. And logistics, which is another expertise I say we have and that we do, which is moving you around and putting things in place. At the end of the day, how is that client feeling? Because you can have a beautiful building, and then if you don't coordinate and furniture is not like it's supposed to be, it doesn't meet the need, or if you've got a power outlet over here and my desk is over there because somebody forgot that, it becomes a mess. And so I said, you know what? After working through some of that, I'm like, this is a thing. This is something. It's necessary, and I think I'm good at it. I can be effective, and I have another way I think I want to approach it. And so 22 years ago, I said, okay, we're looking at turnkey, and we're looking at understanding it from the architect's perspective, from the owner's perspective, because I've had both, right? And so being there and pushing at them to allow us at programming even to start talking about furniture. Because I'm telling Mr. Architect, Ms. Architect, you're thinking about furniture when you design this space. You're thinking about it. You don't really know. You got to get somebody to tell you how much it's going to cost, if you can really do it, but you're thinking about it. So we're saying, just bring us in when you're thinking about it, and then let us tell you how to really do it, and then you can, service your client properly. If you got a building and it's modern, it's got all this glass and this metal, then let us come back with furniture that complements that. We don't want to bring in this old style 1950s wood, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of that stuff was happening, especially in schools.
Yeah.
Because they had these contracts, and they were, it was always the same. You go in a library, what did you see? Light wood and and the whole, and that whole thing is turned all the way around.
Right.
They call them read labs now.
Okay.
And one of the things I think a few years back, we decided, and we worked with HISG. I did some things on my own dime just to go visit with some of the libraries, Yates and Turner, some of the folk in this general area where we are. Went over to Persian, and we talked to them about libraries. It's like, this is the Starbucks era, and these kids are growing up just a little differently. They got the electronics, not that books aren't cool, because they are, and reading is important. But let's see where the kids are. So we talked to them about that. And one of the things we heard from everybody was retention. We want the kids to come in the library. We want them to stay there, because if they're in the library, they're not out doing this or that, whatever. Or if they at lunch, they can come in the library. So how do we do that? And one of the things we learned along the way was, if you make it so that they're comfortable there, and if they're going to talk, you can't that thing and all of that, is cool, for learning to be quiet. But, when kids can have their laptops out, because now everything is one-to-one. I think not just the pandemic, HISD and some of the other larger districts were, they realized these kids have computers at home, and having to bring them, and you ask them, nowadays you talk to kids and they're looking you up on the phone, and whatever you're saying, you can't tell them anything that's not true, because they're sitting there checking you or what have you. You're doing it. And so one of the things I think they realized was, we need to change and do it in a way that the kids are going to be excited about it and want to be here.
Yeah.
So they started changing how libraries work.
Yeah.
And
so let's go back to you and you're going to Texas Southern.
Okay.
Are you originally from Houston?
I grew up in a town in Conroe.
In Conroe, okay, all right.
Street, yeah.
And so you ended up at Texas Southern.
I did.
What were you studying?
It was well, let's see. It ended up being telecommunications as.
So you switched up.
I did. It was telecommunications. Like I told you, I was good at English. That's what. So I got here, and it was telecommunications, and I did an interdisciplinary minor. Okay. And it was because I had done a little journalism, did a little theater, a little, and so a person that you may remember was a great journalist, Mr. McElroy, told me, the best way, because he was always forgetting students, let me get you out of here. You need to get about your business. You don't need to live in school. And so he said, we can do an interdisciplinary minor and major in, what have you, and stuff like that. And we can get you out of here and you can get to work. Right. And so
I think it's important for you to share that, because where you are now, a lot of times people, they are frustrated, especially a lot of our younger generation, like we were. And all of a sudden, we try to figure out, what we want to be when we grow up. And it's just seemingly difficult to kind of just find that one niche. And so you didn't think that you'd be in this seat doing what you do right now when you were going through telecommunications or English or whatever you wanted to do. It kind of came along the way, but it was a part of your journey. And I think it's important for people to know that and hear that you may not know at whatever age that this is what you want to do. Because you said you started this 22 years ago when you were like 10, right? So at the end of the day, I'm like, you still have time to figure out what you want to do.
That's important. You have time. I think learning that what happened, as you go along the way. I think don't panic if you don't know what you want to do. A lot of folks, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to, and they know, and some people really do. I've heard people say, yes, I've always wanted to do this. That's great. But I think as we learn and grow, and then as things are exposed to us, you find out also too what you're good at. I think God gives us all, assets. And a lot of times things that are assets, you don't realize that they're assets. Your ability to speak, or you work with your hands, or things that you do well, and you just kind of, oh, that's a habit. Well, no, it may be something that you need to kind of really pay attention to,
Yeah.
because that's where your strength is.
Yeah.
And then you love it. So it's like somewhere along the line, I heard folks, they feel like work needs to be something that you don't enjoy. That's not true. I think you want to do things that you enjoy, that you do well, and you can get paid for it. I mean,
Absolutely.
to me, that becomes, as an entrepreneur, I think that was the things that I figured out. It's like you have to be able to do it. You do it well, you enjoy it, and then you get paid for it. So I mean, it meets a need, right? So as you're kind of going through life and you're watching things around you, you figure out, like I said, with space planning, I'm like, okay, these folks are so frustrated because nobody's thinking about furniture along the way. The architect wants this beautiful building, some of them do. But for the most part, I get to the end and it's this frustrating thing that was going on. And it happened over and over again. And so I said, you know what? My whole thing about the total package is something that I'm going to present, and I'm going to work through it. And it wasn't really received well at first. Everything back in the day was bid, bid, bid.
Explain what you're saying, because the audience may not understand.
Well, everything
Shop talk
was
like
about a
that.
bid. Construction, you bid, but what happened was, what we started finding was getting the lowest bid is not necessarily getting what you need, right? Because I can bid something and make meet a minimal specification, but it's not going to be exactly what you need. And so what they learned along the way was, well, let's create other, especially when public. Let me say, working at a university, my strength was in public work. Okay, and so in public work, there's a larger accountability. You have to make sure that it's equal, and there's some things in place, and there are people that are connected that may not, in private and corporation setting, may not have to be. It's better now, but back in the day, it wasn't as big of a deal. They could go with one company, stay 20 years, nobody cared. But now, and in public, you got to be a little bit more careful about that. So you're bidding everything, and then you end up, you work for the state, you were bidding, you had to buy your chairs from the prison system, and they may have not been ergonomically comfortable, but you didn't have a way, around that. So it became, how do we, take care of this? So there are different delivery systems that came out. You made competitive seal proposals, which what they were saying was, if I put it out in this way and I allow people to first just be approved, because they have the track record, then it positions them to negotiate as opposed to hard numbers. See, because what they were finding out, when I bid and I give you just a hard number, and then they put that against somebody else's, you really were not getting necessarily the same thing, or the client was not happy, but they were stuck with the lowest amount of money that was being spent. And a lot of times the lowest amount of money is not going to get you what you need, because warranties and things like that, 5-10 years later, now you're buying it again. And they started to learn, okay, no, let me consider some other things other than the price.
So at what point did you realize, I got something here? Like, man, I made the right move? Because I mean, there are a lot of growing pains when you start a business. I'm sure you probably came right out the gate smoking, and everything was perfect. But
No.
Can you talk about some of the challenges that you had becoming a successful entrepreneur? Because that's what you are. Because a lot of people don't understand. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, you have some significant projects that you've done with major entities and companies, and that's huge.
Yeah. I think, and I share, one of the first things I learned was, when you work for a large entity like, say, TSU or anywhere, I mean, Metro, any of the large banks, I mean, just wherever, anything that's already established, when you're handling and you're a project manager, and people say, yes, ma'am, and this, whatever, you're packing this huge monster behind you, though, and you're not thinking, you're going, I'm qualified and I'm this and that, that you actually think that it's you that they're responding to. I think the first thing I learned was no, they're responding to this monster that you represent.
Mm.
And I think one of the things that's happened, and it happened early on, was you become very humble because you
Mm.
understand that now you have to build the brand. It has to be Danette Davis. It has to be Danette K. Davis that they want. It has to be what you can deliver, not what TSU or some other entity represents, or you being that for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think in the beginning, one of the things that was interesting was folk that I thought would just jump at. Oh yes, she knows what she's doing. That's not what happened.
Mm.
It was folk I think unsuspecting, or folk just willing to give you a chance, or when what I learned was when you start a business, all you have is your resume.
Yeah,
So see, it had to be me building on my abilities, and I had to sell Danette first,
yeah,
and get you to trust me.
yeah.
And I've learned through life, honestly, it stays about the reputation of the company. It's not about me personally now, but it is about K Davis Associates.
Hmm.
We literally have to do what we say we're going to do. You have to deliver, and you have to deliver consistently.
Hmm.
You're only as good as your last job.
Yeah.
That is something I tell anybody. I don't care how great you've done. We were so excited when we got to do Dynamo Stadium. Oh, that was great. You
That's
know,
where the Houston Dynamo soccer team plays here in
right,
Houston.
right,
Yeah, yeah.
right. And we had to earn our way even to the work. They brought us to the table, but we had to explain why, the things you were buying, if you let us purchase it for you, then we can do it in a way that will save you money and earn our salary. I mean, I literally had to fight for that job, but I knew it was really, really important that we started to build that resume. I
Yeah.
don't know if we made very much money at all, but we got all of it done, and we got it done in a way that positioned us for the work at the Marriott or for Hobby Airport, Southwest Airlines, the works that we've done at other companies working with things that are connected to the city, you know, um, because you perform every time,
Hmm.
and you do it at a level that because people don't really care if you're small business. If you get and you want to play in the big leagues, you have to perform at that level. You have to be able to meet those same criteria.
Hmm.
So we've been fortunate to have a partner that does our installation, who's large enough. We're as big as his warehouse. We're as big as all the things, and together we've been able to do just really, really major jobs. I say literally we had the Marriott at one time literally was in a Rockets warehouse, and they've been great partners of ours for 15 years, more than 15 years now.
Hmm.
They work with us with respect to the installation part of it, and
Hmm.
so we've been partners in
Hmm.
that respect. So,
So let's go back a little bit because I want to come back to the business and get into the philanthropic aspect of stuff that you do,
mhm,
because you've done some major things here in this Greater Houston area surrounding philanthropy and art and stuff that
mhm,
you talked about in theater and all
right,
these
right.
various things. But let's go back a little further. Let's talk about your upbringing.
Hmm.
So in Conroe, did you learn this entrepreneurial or have this entrepreneurial spirit passed down to you at all from your parents, or talk about that experience?
You know what? That's it. And thank you for asking, or what have you, because I had a fantastic upbringing. I was raised by grandparents. Right?
Mm.
I lost my mom when I was 5 years
Mm.
old. So it was, and I had sisters and brothers or what have you that she was raising as well. I had a grandfather who, when I look back on it now, the things that I saw him do, um, I just thought everybody did. He was major. He was an electrician, right? But he was grandfather then. Because back, I think during the Depression, I mean, he talks about. He shared with me that. He had to work as a driver, and my grandmother worked in the house for these folk, what have you, and stuff. They stayed together and whatever stuff. But he was a licensed electrician,
Mm.
right? And so, but I remember the story, and I also remember when he worked for the savings and loans. It was Conroe Savings and Loans. He was a janitor, right? I remember that happening shortly after that, and then he worked as an electrician for Conroe Electric Company. So I'm trying to, in my mind, and he explained that he was always licensed. The, the segregation was the issue, right? And so he finally, a company hired him. And I remember him telling me this story about how the owner would knock on the door and say, "Do you mind if I bring my assistant Sam around, to work?" And they go let him in the back door.
Hmm.
I had to hear those kinds of stories, But at the same time, he was a kind of guy. He had Troop 245. He had the only black Boy Scout troop and the Little League team. And but I remember kind of savings and loan on the shirts. So he knew to go ask, I need sponsorship.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying, for these shirts. I'm like, as I, think about it, I think about how he worked, and he come home from working for Conroe Electric Company, and my grandmother would always have dinner ready, whatever, because she, didn't work during that period of time, and so he would change clothes.
Well,
And
she worked. She just didn't work.
oh, well, she did hair early. She did hair, right? But he told her with the kids,
No, I got
oh,
you.
she totally,
Yeah.
So I got to see some stuff too, and I still try to, emulate some of that, whole woman, cooking the meal, and stuff like that, working all day and still, because I have that guilt thing going on. But I think one of the things that I saw, I had to remember, but I thought it was what everybody did. He would come home from working, doing what he had to do in this job, change clothes, and then my grandmother would tell him, Miss So and so called. And these were church members, people in the school community, in the black community. And she needs this, and she needs that, or he needs this, and he needs that. So what he would do is change clothes, he'd eat, and then he'd go and service the black community at a lower fee.
Mm.
Okay. And I wasn't realizing what I was looking at until later when I'm like, you know what? Because it was nothing for us to take to them. And so and so says she's got to. So he'd go and work in the black community for little or nothing, for whatever they could afford, because he had that same, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And I saw him later after he got older, let someone that's working under his license. But there was some criteria and there were some customers that they had to include in their work. And when you see that, I saw that. I talked to there's a person here. I don't know if you know John Roberts,
Mm-mm.
but Romy Jerome, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, his dad, I've heard he's a major figure here in Houston, whatever apartments and construction and all kinds of things he did over time. But my grandfather and he, what have you, he had some apartments that were there, and I remember that he would being an electrician, what have you, he'd do the work, but then he would also do the maintenance and take care of them and stuff like that for other people. He would make us go and he said, okay, you're going to take the rent for the week. He would do things like that. He was superintendent of Sunday school. And so we all had to take notes. My sister was like, oh God, we got to go. Everybody, we had to be the secretary of the Sunday school. Everybody had to do that. We had to, it was like the kind of things that now when I remember when a lady came in town and she was this etiquette teacher and she was renting from the place. And so for 1 month's rent, I remember he he said, I just want you to take the girls and I want you to walk them through proper etiquette with how to eat. I'll never forget this. When she laid out you pour from the outside to the
Place
end,
settings.
the whole
Yeah.
thing, But he said it's important that they know, and so I want you to teach them how to do that. He would do stuff, like I said, when I reach back and I think about it, he was also president of the what is it, the school PTA.
Mm-hmm.
How do you? He told me, I knew he had a fifth grade education. He told me, I surround myself with smart people. That's the way he would describe it, but he was a very smart man. How are you president of the PTA? If you're president of the PTA, then I get away with nothing. We didn't,
Right.
I mean, he knew the sheriff. I mean, you really literally, they
Right.
would say, okay, you need to go home, Sam Hubbard's daughter.
Mm.
And so you grow up in a town that's as small as Conroe, and you got parents like that, mom who quilt all summer, and you see in winter, and you see I talk to Michelle Barnes now about those quilts, this thing, because I grew up watching. I didn't understand the value. I didn't know what I was looking at, and Michelle does this whole quilt. Now it's an exhibit, because they, back in the day, that whole thing about quilting and then putting certain messages on the quilts and hanging them out.
Mm-hmm.
You see, that was passed down to my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
So when she would do these intricate patterns, the birds of 50 states and all the different things like that, there were things and that were passed down into that whole, I guess, what do you call it? When you're making quilts, just the doing of it, that came from her heritage. And my grandfather would say, my dad was on the block when freedom rang out. That was always a story he would tell about that. It's that, and how when I wanted to drive and I'm 18 and I go, I want to take driver's ed, and he goes, no, you need to get your voter's registration card, because that's what you're able to do at 18. You're going to do that. That was taught to me. So voting was something. It wasn't even a, you know, you had to.
Yeah.
You're 18 years old. Do you understand? And he would tell me these stories about how they would ask you how many things were how many
marbles,
jelly beans were in a jar,
in the jar.
and the money that they paid and things like that. So I grew up knowing and understanding. My brother would bring home, everybody thought Dick Gregory was a comedian, and he was a comedian, but Dick Gregory was, he was really he was saying some things.
Yeah.
He was political even way back then, and I'm in high school. And so those kinds of things were passed on, and I carried them on into, first thing I came down here to do was look for NAACP. When I got here, I thought that was what I was supposed to do.
Right. Because of your grandfather.
Because of my grandfather when I got here. So.
Wow. And so that, kind of really that was instilled in you, which explains a lot about who you are as an entrepreneur, and who you are as an individual, and who you are as a philanthropist. Here recently at Tom Bass Park, there was an unveiling that took place. I had the great fortune of being present and being a part of the entire journey. I mean, from your conceptual part of that to seeing it come to fruition, and that is the conversation with George piece.
Absolutely,
that was just unveiled. And so, if you could explain to the listeners about that
conversation with George. When all of that happened, right? And you're right. I do a lot of things with theater and art, so I've used that as a way to express. It's a way to do it that people will absorb it without usually a big fight, right? That's why comedy is so special, because you can say some things and they're dead serious, but you laughing and you're absorbing
it. Softens it a little bit through the laughter.
Exactly. And same thing about art. We can say that's my understand, whatever, but at the same time, if it makes a statement, then it penetrates, the soul and the mind or what have you and stuff like that. They don't even realize. I think people don't realize sometimes. So the idea was, I felt like, we need to do something that is lasting. Okay, because when people get so arrogant, I think it's hard to watch that. I think to watch someone so arrogant as to, I'm watching it and I'm like, seriously, you're just gonna sit there on his neck, And so it tells me it's okay. Everybody has to do something, whatever it is, however small. But I'm going, I literally have a friend who is so talented, and we can really do something that's impactful, and in a way that the whole community, the whole world, if they will, can appreciate. And we need to talk about this, because to me, I've seen, conversations takes us places, right? And things are better. I mean, we repeat some things, but usually, like my pastor used, would always say, y'all want to get back together, talking about a relationship. He goes, no. You don't want to get back together. You want to get together in the future, because you don't want to go back, because going back is, all of the stuff that exists, and you've grown from that. And I think that's kind of what I'm saying with George. It's like, I wanted to do a bronze statue, and I wanted to do it because it's going to be there. It'll be gone there long after we're gone. And I wanted it to be done in a way that would be something that people would appreciate, for one thing, be beautiful. And then I wanted it to be impactful, but I wanted it to be to inspire a conversation, right? And so we thought, I'm talking to the artist, and we go back and forth, and it's okay, then we need to put him in a conversational position. Let's make him, so we decided to put him at a table. And just like you've noticed, I talked to you about this. We put his hat on backwards. We went through all the photos and figured out how do we make this something that when people go and see it, they'd like to sit and have a conversation. If not with George, with somebody at the table. We want to put him at a table, leave enough room for people to sit, eat their food or whatever they want to do. And so the journey began. We did the warrior statue that's over in TSU's. It's in the art. It's in the gallery, and it was scheduled to go up. That was also a philanthropic thing that I just wanted to do that for the school, or what have you, and for some people that are there that make a difference in the community. I just feel like you do that. I do it. And how it's taken, I know from my heart I'm doing it, and I know over time, because it's the right thing to do, that it'll slowly have impact, right? And so, because that's how we are, we get it later, So with George, just like in discussion with you, I reached out to my friendly politicians who I know have the right heart, from Reagan Flowers to you, to Dr. Shabazz, and eventually Rodney, what have you, and all the people along the way. I reached out to say, okay, this is something we want to do. And you guys were like, yes, great, let's do it. And then we ran into into the walls that have to do with, and I wouldn't necessarily call it politics. I guess I'd call it red tape.
Red tape, personalities,
All
all of the above.
I ran into some very interesting things, I think, because
Well, that's the thing, and it kind of goes back to something you talked about earlier. The people that you thought were going to help you with your business, turned out not to be those individuals, and then those that were unsuspecting or that you didn't consider or even know about possibly, were the ones that opened up the doors for you. And I have a whole lot of stories that I can talk about relative to that in my growth as an entrepreneur and just politics and just life in general. But at the end of the day, you can call it red tape, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but those people, it's kind of not hurtful, but it's frustrating at times or disheartening to a degree when you know that there are people in positions of authority that God has allowed to be placed in those positions that could have made a difference or could have made a decision to help you along the way or with your vision, that did not. And you can cry about it, you can be mad about it, you can just wallow in it, or you can do what you did and what many of us who are leaders and visionaries do. You just find another way, and that's what you did. You found another way.
I just kept pushing and
kept pushing.
What I think, I've like-minded people. I think what I'm, when I talk about art and some of the things I love, I still do, but so are others. I found, there are folk along the way that when you put it out there and you keep putting it out there, folk have things in their heart and you don't realize, the appreciation and things like that. Who knew? I mean, I know Dr. Shabazz, it's like you love the community, Jeff, and she loves her community. Right, so she really wanted it to be a third ward, and really,
well, that's where I wanted it to be.
Right,
we talked about it. I wanted to be in the CUNY home.
In the CUNY home,
that was the perfect place I felt for it.
And then we talked about
Yates High School,
because you are really big. I tell anybody, I said everything I do that has to do with schools, I have to always check on Yates because Jeff, and that the whole Yates Alumni Association is really, really, really. You guys really work hard. For them, and it was and third ward would have been perfect, right? But then when you think about, we say the international exposure that we really want with the statue, and all the people we want to affect, then Tom Bass Park, when Rodney said the county is going to help, we agree, and we're going to help push this thing through, and choose. I mean, what is the best place? Does it need to be a county place in third ward or fifth ward or what have you? And I think when I saw Tom Bass Park, I mean, the peacefulness, when we start talking about a conversation with, and the beauty and all the people that come there, all the races, I mean, everybody, it's just right away. We knew.
And the backstory of who Tom Bass
Actually, that was wonderful when he shared that.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Just
didn't-
kind of all of that historical knowledge and backstory of who he was and why it's fitting.
Isn't that perfect?
Yeah, to have
know?
George Floyd's bronze statue, your
There.
contribution there.
Yeah, when he shared that story, I think the day of the unveiling, to hear that he had been that kind of guy who made way, for the first African American to be,
Right.
the commissioner there and all of that, it is perfect.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what, as that thing goes forward, then it makes perfect sense. Because he even talked about doing things for him and then the other park across the way. So it works for me. I'm absolutely ecstatic that it's there, and I thought it looked beautiful. He was telling me, because we were talking about in September, they want to do a kind of a revisit, and maybe we'll have the marker, the signage and thing up there, what have you. Rodney says, yeah, we need to put something there. He says, we've got some calls and folks say, hey, it's a man out in that park. Sitting at a bench, because they didn't realize. And I said, well, good. It looks really lifelike if they think. He said people have called and reported the man out in the park. Which is hilarious.
Just loitering, huh?
Right, just sitting out in the park. And it's late, so they're wondering, because they can see him because of the lights, the beautiful lights that he's put on the thing.
Well, they're concerned, like, oh my God, but that's interesting. That in itself is a conversation piece.
It is.
When you think about, the judgment and having a judgment of someone, that's not even real. Like, it's not even a real person.
The fact that they would call them.
That's what I'm saying. But clearly you're calling because they look like a threat.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like that in itself is a conversation piece that, this lifelike, figure is sitting there minding its own business, not able to harm anybody.
Right.
And yet, somebody feels threatened about somebody that can't even.
It's like, surely he's not supposed to be there.
Surely he's not supposed
even
to
though
be there.
All the light in the world is shining on him on purpose.
It's a whole lot, like the preachers say, just give me some time to just work on this one. And so I just think that is, oh wow, that's just an amazing point that you just brought up, because just think about his life, what happened to him. And isn't it ironic to me, when he was 7 years old, and we think about what's going on in this country right now, particularly with the Supreme Court and the decisions that they're making, that at 7 years of age, in the second grade, I want to say, he was George Pierre Floyd Jr. He wrote an essay and said that he wanted to be a Supreme Court judge, a Supreme Court justice. And he saw the importance at 7 years of age of Thurgood Marshall and being a Supreme Court justice and the influence and impact that has on our world, our society, us as a people. And to see individuals in those seats, doing things to, in many people's minds, including my own, take us backwards.
Right.
It's interesting.
Well, that's one of the reasons for those people who've not seen the statue and gone over and visited the piece, that very piece is there. His essay that he wrote to his teacher is there. We got the original and have it. It'll be there forever, there in front of him, because he did at 7 years old want to impact the world. And he's done that, and I think that the fact that at 7, that was his thought, I think it's important that it also sits there with him, because he, the decisions that will be made by people that are, judges and justices or what have you, because I think over time, there are some things that we will get there, with I know the George Floyd congressional act and things like that are stalled or what have you, but there's been some things that have changed as a result of it. It really has been, and I think we'll get there if we don't keep repeating history. I was talking to a girl and some young people in my office, and it's interesting or what have you, and we were having this very conversation about it, and she, and not even 30 years old, she's maybe, I don't know if she's 26. She may be about 26 years old, and she was saying that history is repeating itself. I think we're better, but it's repeating. And I thought it was so interesting that she's young enough to know that. I said, 'cause I've lived through it, so
Mhm.
I get what you're saying. And she's saying, but I think we're better. And I thought about it, last night. I said, you know what, she's right. I always feel like we're always better because whether you can gauge it or not, there's always things happening around that are changing attitudes and things like that. And then, no matter what it looks like, there's always that influence and things that are better. You can't help but get better or what have you, even though a lot of times because we don't remember and continue to share with, to me, next generations, as we ever, just like my grandfather shared with me those things and showed me, I think we have an obligation to share with our young people, young women. You talk about the act, the whole thing with Roe
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what have you. I think we have an obligation to share so that they don't have to learn the hard way, because it's almost like where we are now. Now you go back and they have to learn it like you learned it. They have to march like you marched and all that, when
Mhm.
that shouldn't have been, because we should have shared with them to a point to where they really understood the reality. We sometimes don't want to do that because you don't want to relive it.
You're right.
You get me? You
But you
don't
know
want to
what?
relive it.
I feel like I just wrote my first book called "Don't Argue with Me," and I talk about the civil right. I call many the baby boomers the beneficiaries of the civil rights struggle.
Hmm.
They bought into this so-called integration, which is really desegregation. It wasn't integration because they didn't integrate any resources or whatnot into the black community to make us equal and on the same footing as them. And I say all that to say though that many of the baby boomers, they just thought that they had arrived and just kind of forgot. And it was like, oh, we good now. We got affirmative action, and we got, we can go to the same schools now. We can eat at the same restaurants, shop at the same places. We can live in the same neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, these systems have never been eradicated. They've never changed. I mean, the systems are still controlled. They were created by those that had been in power for the longest. White male dominated society, white supremacy driven. And at the end of the day, they have yet to change. And so, yeah, you have different players, but the system is still, that's why black entrepreneurship and black entrepreneurs like you, as well as philanthropists, because we have to think about many of the movements that took place back in the day, even the civil rights movement. It wasn't free. It
No, no,
required
no.
people who were entrepreneurs in the church, you know, contributing money, raising money, giving to efforts and things to try to bring this awareness and bring about the change. And so, how important to you is, black entrepreneurship and black philanthropy?
Well, it's extremely important that I thought about that, and I can say I am the black community, but then what does that mean? That means that just the way you think, just naturally, I think or what have you. If I'm turning, I think a dollar ought to turn around at least a couple times in the black community. And when I say that, it's not that you got to go. A lot of times people think like retail. They think I got to have a black store. Got to. No, I mean, who's your attorney? Who's your real estate agent? Who's your CPA? Who's your, mine are all African American,
Mhm.
and they're great at what they do. And I didn't have to go out of my way to find them
Mhm.
because they're just here. But they're also, if you're in a neighborhood and you're working in an environment, then just like others, it's who you know. I mean, you
Mhm.
literally. So, in other words, but you do have to make a conscious. It's a conscious thing too.
Mhm. Mhm.
You don't go out of your way. And I'm gonna tell you, like with anybody, I'm not gonna take any less service, but we've been doing this thing a long time. When I say we, I mean African Americans as well as others. So we're as good as the next person. You don't
Mhm.
have to give up anything to do business with African Americans or other minorities. And
Right.
that's something that I think that has been a plight, from the beginning. It
Mhm.
was, that whole thing about we can't find anybody. So
Mhm.
working at TSU on the other side and having these guys coming every day going, well, I can't get work. And it's like, okay, well, you do it and you need somebody. So you have to just kind of come, you stretch a little, what have you, and then what you'll find is people are available,
Yeah.
but you have to be intentional.
Yeah.
And then once you'll find, because what I found is folk that who maybe had to stretch a little in the beginning, and they realize that, well, even though this may be an MWBE program, I tell folk, I just happen to be African American. I do this, I'm as good as the next person. I'm as good as anybody in this field. Trust me, I am. And I feel like that.
Right.
And I have to prove it all the time, as does anybody, right? But don't, you don't want the label of, well, I'm this because somebody's black, or this because somebody's female, whatever, because that's not really why you want to do business people at the end of the day. You just want that door open, or what have you, and you want to do business because they're good at what they do. Allow me to do that. Give me that opportunity. Some people think that we're past that because you got black CEOs and people who,
that we've arrived.
that we've arrived. Yeah. But and honestly, you have. But now that you've arrived, then naturally, then if you're going to hire someone, then if this be, make it equal.
But you know what? You haven't arrived. I don't feel like you've arrived. I mean, you've gotten to a particular place, but you're replaceable. Anybody can you can be replaced if you're an employee, or whatever. Or if you've gotten to a place, the same people you see going up, the same people you see if you happen to go down.
Right.
And so that's why it's important to treat people right and do things the right way and help lift people up as you climb or as you've gotten to that level. I think about when I was in banking. I was VP over at the bank, Washington Mutual, and even Bank United before it was acquired by WAMU. I remember putting people together through joint venture partnerships to go after contracts and help them get financing and stuff like that. And some of them, I'm here to tell you, some of those white, clients of mine didn't like the other person, but they understood the assignment. They understood that it was about this contract and about growing their business and growing the scale and everything like that. While at the same time, when I was president and CEO of the Greater Houston Black Chamber, formerly Houston Citizen Chamber, as you know, I tried to put people together, and they got in their feelings about, I don't like this person, or they don't want to work with this person because they made it personal, and they didn't understand the bigger picture. And so many opportunities were squandered or left on the table or given to someone else because of those various reasons. I think that it's important and incumbent for us to see the bigger picture, that if we don't work together, regardless of our feelings towards each other or whatever, I mean, you ain't gonna like everybody. I don't like everybody in my family. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, they still my family.
Right. And you don't have, well, it's not personal. I think one of the things I've learned is that it's not personal. I keep my eye on the prize, right? And so there's been relationships. You do it every day, honestly. I mean, you don't have to be your personal. Everybody's not your personal friend, but just it's a work associate. A certain behavior is necessary and a certain protocol, and so you behave in that protocol. It's almost like whatever that is. Whether I'm on a board or just like you mentioned, you work as a CEO or whatever. When those roles change or what have you, then people need to just, to me, keep. That's what I say. Keep your eye on the prize. Do what you're supposed to do. Understand. My issue, though, a lot of times when I say people have arrived, what I'm saying is you are in a position to make that next person vice president or do whatever they need to do, and they may be African American, they may not be. But then, you being an African American, you don't need an MWBE program to tell you if you got a qualified African American. You got to sit there and wonder if somebody's going to judge you because I promoted a black person, so now I got to worry about that's not your issue.
Right.
Now that's something that I think that we need to check.
It's a problem.
You don't need a program for you to know that if you're at that level and somebody else is qualified, then you just do the right thing.
I appreciate people talk about how Maynard Jackson in Atlanta made black millionaires, but he forcefully did it because he said, ain't nobody getting paid, ain't nobody getting contracts unless there's some black folks getting some of this work. He said another plane won't fly off of the tarmac, unless this changes. Wellington Webb in Denver, Colorado, same when he was mayor, Marion Barry in Washington, D.C., and so many others that I can kind of go back and look at. They created opportunities and they wasn't worried about the fact that Danette Davis was getting paid or how much she was getting paid,
Right.
and counting your money and whatever and keeping food off your table. And I'm so proud of you because, like you talk about giving back to the community. Of course, you've done that through not only these sculptures and artwork through TSU and then of course the conversation with George, but through the arts in many ways, through scholarships,
Right.
And things that you've done from an investment standpoint that, you're one of those unsung heroes in the community that we all need. And now you're building a huge, massive building for your company in the neighborhood. You chose to be in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Talk about that briefly.
Yeah, we decide. That's my mantra. And K Davis in the Community, which is KDITC, is my nonprofit foundation. So I want to say that. So, and we will, come at folks and say at some point we may need you to give and be supportive, because it's something that I'm doing and I was doing and I'll do and I'll continue to do it, and what have you. In schools, it's just been my heart. We do a lot of work. We do most of our work at schools. We're at HISD, Spring ISD, Fort Bend ISD. We're at Dallas ISD and Garland ISD and others with really large contracts that we've been fortunate enough to have. So I always make sure that schools are included in the arts programs, after school programs, and things like that. I'm always, I get a call and, somebody says, just really last a couple of weeks ago, and they needed a bus paid for it's kids, whatever. It's like when I get that phone call from certain people, I understand what that means. It means that they really need that done. And we just write a check and go on, because it's not about whether or not the school can afford it. These are things that are outside of that. Because many times those things are outside of what schools can control. And you got people, and they're real people. And these kids need things and what have you, other programs, and we just do it. But you talked about the building. And the building is K Davis, it's a K Davis Showroom Plus, is what it's called. And you're right, I chose to put it in Sunnyside. Just like my office is in Third Ward, not far from TSU and Wheeler, what have you, and stuff like that. And it's because we're building the showroom. The showroom has traditional showroom stuff, as you'll be able to come in there and see furniture and things like that. But it has also mostly greens, which is my husband's business. He's a chef. So we've got a full certified kitchen there where we're going to do some interesting things. He does organic breads and things like that. So this is the holistic approach. Now we're talking about K Davis in the community and mind, body, and spirit aspect that kind of culminates. You can't be one and not the other. That's the thing. You talk about the arts, love of the arts, health, wellness, organic foods and things like that. He's farm the table. He's been like that for years, and we've done it. And you just can't do things like that out of your house after a while. You get a certain level. So the kitchen is there. But the thing about the building that we're going to do, not just have the showroom, but we're in the community. We've already partnered with addicts across the street and the church across the street, what have you. But we will do some what we're calling retreat, small business things that will make it available for them to do some unusual things, meetings and retreats, and partner with some other. I'm thinking about partnering with other small. There's folk that have hotels and other dining establishments. They're in Third Ward or not far. The whole urban experience thing is a big thing now, right? And I think what we do, we spend our dollars in the community, and I know I'm bringing employees over there, and we know that. I think the mayor's doing this whole
complete communities.
Yeah, the complete communities, and then they're doing the solar. That whole solar project is coming, so we know that there'll be other things coming. We want to not have it be what they say, the food desert or whatever they were saying or what have you. We want it to blow up and be exciting. I found out that Sunnyside was like the original place that blacks settled after slavery in Houston. I didn't know that. We just kind of wanted to be around, in the community and do some things or whatever, shake it up, what have you. We feel like, they fall. You don't decide, what grows and develops. We do. It's like if I build a place there and I decide, and then I bring the juice, and the people or what have you, then that's how it should be, as opposed to just letting somebody else decide.
And we thank you so much for doing that and for contributing and investing and doing what you do. And this won't be the last time we have you on Real Talk. We honored you in the Forward Times through Women's History Month a couple of years ago, highlighting you and the work you do in the community and your business. And we'll continue to do so. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do and for your contributions to Greater Houston area and our community.
Thank you so much.
All right. God bless you. All right, guys. That'll do it. We're about to get up out of here. Real Talk Junkies. Another great edition. Make sure you all share the link and tell everybody to tune in next Wednesday for another great edition of Real Talk Junkies, y'all. Peace.